Hey guys, what's up? It's Charlie here, and today we're going to be looking at survival myths that could get you killed. I'm sure we all think we know how to survive out in the wild, but there may be some tips you know that aren't tips at all. Remember, a lot of what you see on wildlife shows is totally fake. So here are some very common myths about survival that could get you killed if you really tried them. But one tip that won't harm you is to subscribe and press the notification bell too. Coming up first, we have sucking out venom. We've all seen it in movies. Somebody gets bitten by a rattlesnake out in the desert. They think they're done for, but then their heroic friend steps in. Their friend grabs their arm or leg and sucks the poison out. Well, it may look cool in the Hollywood blockbusters, but this is one big fat lie. That's right, cutting and sucking out snakebite venom will not work in real life. All this does is put saliva into the opened wound. This could actually make things worse if the venom is non-fatal. Instead, it could simply lead to an infection on the person who's been bitten. And a lot of the time, infected bites are actually what takes people out, not the bites themselves. Not only that, it could also harm the person who's trying to suck the venom out. That's because it would simply spread into that person's mouth. This will mean they're ingesting the poisonous venom themselves. So what should you actually do if your pal gets bitten by a snake? Well, instead you should try and put pressure on the snake bite. This will prevent the bite from getting infected, and hopefully stop the venom from spreading too much into the person's bloodstream. After that, there's not much else you can do except for try and find a doctor. Remember, try not to panic, as not all snake bites are venomous. But if you know that one is, then your best bet is to simply find a doctor. Next up is cave shelter. Let's say you're stuck in the woods. The number one priority you probably look for is warmth, and that's a good thing. In TV shows, people often try and find a secluded cave and then light a fire. You may think that if you can get a good fire going in a cave, you can live there for quite some time and survive. Well, that is not the case at all. Instead, you should do one or the other. Either go into a cave for warmth or make a fire for warmth, not both. That's because lighting a fire in a cave can be very dangerous. And I'm not even talking about the fire part. Instead, it's the heat part of the fire which is dangerous in a cave. Heat from a fire makes rocks expand, and expanding rocks then break. These broken rocks will often crush and trap people inside the caves. So either have a fire outside or go into a cave for warmth. Don't do both. Hundreds of people in the USA alone make this mistake every year. Some of them aren't even lost, they just think it will be cool or romantic to have a fire in a cave. But the reality is it will simply make rocks expand and trap you in there. Next up is playing dead. We all know the very common tip about what to do when you encounter a bear in the wild. Many nature shows, your parents, and even teachers at school may have told you to play dead if you encounter a bear. But this is an epic misconception. What you should actually do if you encounter a threatening bear is back away. That is, if it's a brown or grizzly bear. If that's the case, they're likely trying to get you away from their children. So in that case, do what they want you to do and back away. But if it's a black bear, then things are a different matter. If you encounter a black bear, then they're often very aggressive. In that case, you may well have to fight for your life. So if you go out into a wood known to have black bears, bring some bear spray just in case. Next up is eating snow. Imagine you're lost out in a snowy terrain. You may be feeling really thirsty, and it's essential you keep your fluids up. You may think you don't need to worry about getting dehydrated in a snowy environment, but that is not the case. Eating snow for water is actually a terrible idea. The reason why is because snow is freezing cold. This can bring your core temperature down to dangerous levels. What you should actually do is try and boil this water first. If you can try and make a fire, then get some snow and boil it in a pan. This will make it normal water and mean your body temperature doesn't go down to a seriously low level. Or if you can't boil it, try and keep it in a container and sit on it to make it hot. It may sound silly, but it's better than eating snow. Next up is eat what animals eat. If you're stuck in the wilderness, you're likely going to get pretty hungry. So everyone knows you need to forage for food. But what foods are dangerous for you to eat and which foods are safe? Unless you're a survival expert, you likely don't know every single berry which is poisonous and every single one which is safe. Well, you may have heard the famous rule, eat anything animals eat. You may assume that what's good for birds and squirrels and bears is good for us too, right? Well, unfortunately for us, that's not the case. There are many things that birds and squirrels eat which we would find toxic. Certain types of nuts, mushrooms, berries, and other things we find poisonous. But they're totally fine for squirrels and birds. So if you see an animal eating something, don't automatically assume it's safe. Instead, collect it just in case, but don't eat it unless you're sure it's safe. Then only eat these potentially toxic things if you really need to. Otherwise, you could be risking your life for no reason. Next up is drinking pee. Yeah, now it's time for the survival myth we've all seen on TV. Bear Grylls got famous for pointing out that drinking pee can keep you hydrated. But that is not always true. Drinking urine to stay hydrated only works if you actually have enough water in your system. Remember, your pee is not a bunch of fresh water. Instead, it's just recycled bodily waste. And even pee which is healthy is not necessarily recycled water. A lot of it is the things which are not good in your body, which it's trying to get out. Most of the time, pee carries no rehydration value, and instead it will have the opposite effect, making you dehydrated. Not only that, pee is very hard to keep down and could make you vomit. This will mean you'll have even less water and food in your system, which is not a good thing. So instead, try and find a nearby lake or river. Or if you're in a snowy environment, do what I suggested before and boil snow. Next up, we have wet matches. Of course, one of the most essential things you need when surviving out in the wild is matches. They can be great in order to make an SOS smoke signal, or if you need to cook up some food or snow using a fire. Now, it's a common survival myth that wet matches will work when you dry them again, but that's actually not the case at all. Moisture changes the chemical balance in the match heads. This makes it impossible to light even if you make them dry again. So make sure you keep your matches out of the water, preferably in a waterproof container. Alternatively, before you go into the wild, coat your matches in nail polish. Nail polish will actually waterproof your matches. This will mean that even if they do get wet, then the nail polish will protect the chemicals in the match head. Next up is drink seawater. Let's say your boat crashes and you have to escape in a lifeboat. You may not have many water supplies around. So the obvious thing to do may be to drink seawater. Well, believe it or not, that would be the worst thing you could possibly do. Remember, seawater is salted. This means it will make you even more dehydrated rather than quench your dehydration. Instead, you should try and rely on the water purification tablets most lifeboats have. The same goes for if you're out lost in the desert. You may find what is known as a dry lake, which is a lake in a desert. But oftentimes, these dry lakes will have salt water. If you're able to make a fire, you can actually boil the salt out of salt water. This will make purified water that you can normally drink. But remember, although it seems obvious, drinking seawater can be fatal. Check out the poll in the top right corner to vote for the biggest survival myth you believed. Or if you didn't believe any of them, then choose that option. If you guys want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that on screen in a moment. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.